We have now with us, I'm Dr. Joseph Leong. I'm a psychiatrist by training. I'm also co-founder for the community, the Christian Mental Health Advocate, together with Pastor Chua. And now we have this segment here, this wonderful team here from the Singapore Anglican Community Services. Let's put our hands together for them. Right. And just now, SOS really gave us very sobering statistics, and I think it's a wake-up call for each one of us what we can actually do. And actually, the Singapore Anglican Community Service has been in the mental health sphere for many years, right? And then the whole team is here today, and they're going to share with us this journey to recovery, perspective on psychiatric rehabilitation and reintegration. I'll pass the time now to Steven, who will actually introduce the team. Thank you.
Very good morning. Good morning to all of you. And greetings from the Singapore Anglican Community Services. Is the mic okay? Can you all hear me? Yeah. My name is Steven, and I'm the Executive Director of the SACS Psychiatric Services. And together with me, Pastor Gilbert. Pastor Gilbert is the chaplain lead for our psychiatric services. And Archdeacon Wong Tak Meng is our Archdeacon for the community services. And Kok Liang, Mr. Tan Kok Liang is our peer specialist for our SCC CMHC. And again, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share with you the journey to recovery from the perspective on the psychiatric rehab and reintegration. SACS founded in 1967 and is the community service arm of the Singapore Diocese. And the visions of our organization is to be a light in the society, relieving suffering and enriching lives with the love of Christ. And perhaps in the context of this conference and a lot of partnership that we can establish to see how we can work together to be the light in the society. In 1986, we started providing psychiatric services. The mission of us is to support persons with mental health issues in their recovery and improve their quality of life. Besides the psychiatric services, SACS also provides the senior services, family and children services. And we are located in the different locations. Currently, we have 6 locations in Singapore. We provide a continuum of the services from the people with mental health issues who require the nursing care. They will be in our nursing home in Buangkok or in Taman Jurong, all the way to the people who are more independent that they live in the community. I will share with you some of these services later on. I want to spend a little bit of time to talk to you about the admission criteria in the case that you would like to refer cases to us. First, Singaporean or PR, and number 2, diagnosed with psychiatric condition, stabilized and with medication and under psychiatric follow-up. Number 3, ambulance and ADL independence. 4, non-communicable disease. Number 5, no history of substance abuse for the last 2 years. And no history, no suicide attempts for the last 3 months. And also no posing high risk to self and others. Some of these admission criteria doesn't apply to the community cases and also to the nursing home cases. First service that we have is the residential rehab services. We provide a service that for the step-down care to those referred from the acute wards, located in Simei and Hougang. In total, we are able to provide more than 300 capacity. Number 2 is a psychiatric shelter home located at Farrer Park. It's a psychiatric shelter home provide the temporary accommodations for the people with the psychiatric conditions for the reintegrate back to the community. We have 5 locations to provide day rehab services located at the various parts of Singapore. We adapted the clubhouse model to involve our clients in the various work units, such as the admin and reception, food service, housekeeping, social recreation, and employment. And we have these community intervention teams located at the 3 places, Bukit Batok, Pasir Ris, and Yishun. And what we do, we provide assessment, counseling, therapy, case management, and psychoeducations. And we provide a regular home visits to ensure that the people that we serve, they are stabilized in the community and continue to involve in a meaningful activities. And we also work with the caregiver to support the caregiver, empower them that they are able to journey with their loved one when they're going through this recovery journey. The integrated employment support services has 5 components. Number 1, we have this social enterprise. Some of you may have heard about this something old, something new. We have 8 outlets. The key intention is to train the people that we serve in the retail services, and hopefully they are able to move on to find a similar job. And the work integrated skill training is a 5 weeks, Monday to Friday, half-day programs to equip the clients that we serve with the 3 domains: the personal effectiveness, wellness management, and employability skills. This is to equip them so that they're able to find a job in the community. And we have these employment support services, and it helps person that we serve seek meaningful employment and to sustain the employment as part of the reintegration into the community. And we provide the access and match clients to the relevant job, the job training and internship opportunities, and assist the client to secure, sustain in the job. We have this EAP Plus Employee Assistance Program. It supports the employees, the company employees, with or at risk of having mental health issues. And we have these youth services. The youth counseling service provides for those who are aged 13 to 17 years old, struggle with mental health. And we aim to support the youth through the journey of understanding their moods, anxiety, stressor, and the sense of self. And we just started 3 months ago, the 1st April this year, the CREST Youth at the Northeast, the youth 13 to 24 years old. And this is the area that we're also happy to partner with the churches to see how we can go to your church to increase the public awareness of mental health and promote the recognition of the early sign and provide the basic emotional support as well. Just to share with you the type of the mental disorder, the clientele that we serve, 62% of the clientele that we serve with schizophrenia. If you look at the statistic, perhaps this is not the top, the illness in the mental illness in Singapore, but this is a group of people who require a lot support and the rehabilitations. So for SACS Psychiatric Services, this is actually the highest percentage of the people that we serve, followed by the mood disorder and anxiety disorder. The age group, if you look at this like that, below 30 years old, we have like 19 to almost 20%, 30 to 49 years old, 41%, 50 and above, 40%. Look at this distribution that actually tell us they still have a long way to go and to see how we can partner together to support them in the community. Last year alone, in 2022, we served 2,500 clients in the community. If you look at that, if we take 10% of them are Christians, we have about 250 of them are Christian. And there are 2 groups of the Christian that the people that we serve. One group, they actually have been Christian before they suffer from mental illness. And after they suffer from the mental illness, they come to our service, and there's one challenge that they face is in how do they reintegrate back to the church. Is the church ready to receive them for those who are suffering from mental illness? But we have another group of people who become a Christian after they suffer from mental illness, and they have no ideas, no experience of the church life. You talk about cell group, they have no idea. You talk about listening to a sermon for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, they have no such experience. So we really need to partner together to see how we can help people with mental health issues to reintegrate even to the church. And our model of care is very recovery-oriented. And recovery is a deeply personal, unique process, and it changes one's attitude, values, feelings, goals, skill, and or the roles. And with the limitation caused by the illness, they're able to find a meaningful life again in their recovery journeys. So the 5 dimensions that we are working on in our recovery-based oriented services: person-centered, strength-based, holistic, into the biopsychosocial and spiritual element, ecocentric, and the culturally relevant. And these are the holistic programs that we provide for the people who come forward for the service. And if you ask me, for my past 20 years of the service working with people with mental health issues, the one thing that I learned is people with mental health issues, they do recover from their psychiatric conditions. So long the proper support is given, they are actually able to live a meaningful life in the community. That's my sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually sharing about the role of religion and spirituality in the rehab. And this begins with a passage from Luke 24, verse 13 to 35, the road to Emmaus. And I want to highlight the embodied role of religion and spirituality in psychiatric rehabilitation. And some of you are familiar with this passage. It is a 7-mile journey that culminates in spiritual growth and recognition of God's presence in ordinary places among regular people. And as they moved along on the journey, Jesus and his 2 companions share what has been happening in their lives, ponder the meaning of Holy Scripture, share their confusion and doubts, and move through the chaos to more clarity. As the journey concludes, the 2 who appear to reside in Emmaus extended hospitality to their fellow traveler. He accepts, and they break bread together in a holy meal. It is through these embodied practices, walking together, eating together, enjoying each other's hospitality, that they begin to recognize the Holy One in the midst of daily living, even in a time of suffering. Then when Jesus suddenly vanishes from their sight, they are empowered to go out and share with others what they have experienced. And this gospel story or narrative encapsulates for us the engagement with a complete understanding of the whole person in his or her environment that reflects relationality and accompaniment. So what is relationality? We all know that relationship gives us meaning. It gives existence to human experience, spirituality, and therapeutic growth. And relational spirituality is defined as ways of relating to the sacred that can help us move through experiences of suffering and trauma to lives of hope, meaning, and generativity. RS is treating persons who are suffering in contrast to the purely biomedical goal of seeking to alleviate symptoms of mental disorder or diseases. RS Oh, okay, thank you. You're with me? So what is relationality? That part I finished. So RS calls those in mental health field, is defined as ways, RS is treating people who are suffering, in contrast to the purely biomedical model of seeking to alleviate symptoms of mental disorders or diseases. So RS calls those who are in mental health field for broader and deeper understanding of cultural, spiritual, existential, relational, even systemic dynamics that shape clients' illness narratives and interpretation of their own suffering and their vision of a meaningful life. So what is spiritual accompaniment? It is always a great need for us to feel that we are being accompanied and not left alone to suffer by ourselves. So spiritual accompaniment teaches that human beings are made to exist in relationship. SA is a work that is characterized by a search for meaning or understanding in order to live more closely to the sacred and transcendent. And for us Christians, we call this sacred and transcendent the Christian God. And this can be framed in religious language from various traditions or be a very individualistic response to making meaning of their suffering. So SA is an act which is deeply and highly relational. It involves attending to the soul of the one suffering and also with our own experience of the suffering of the other. It means that we as Christians, we are the accompanier who is present and collaboratively explore with the clients in the inner life journey. So, relational model of care. It is crucial for those of us in mental health work or mental health professionals are respectful of the culturally we are sensitive, we are open, and we develop an awareness of our own biases that may have regarding religion and spirituality in order to minimize any negative impact that our bias may have in treating our mental health patients. Because without such awareness, mental health professionals run the risk of affecting negatively the quality of the therapeutic relationship. So the role of spiritual accompaniment with our clients in their religions and spiritualities is crucial. Because it is highly relational that involve experiencing the lived experiences of the people living with mental health challenges arising from their disability. And this relationship is meant to reflect the model of Christ that is endangered through Christ-like behavior. And following, I will share with you an encounter that Jesus had with this woman at the well from John chapter 4, verse 4 to 26. First of all, we realize that Jesus began where she was, creating a safe climate by asking this woman at the well for a drink, and Jesus engages her. There was reciprocity, there was a giving and receiving. This woman received salvation, and Jesus had water to quench his thirst. Both of them mutually benefited from that relationship. Her shame was removed and spread God's grace, and Christ himself was being proclaimed. So we find that in this example, Jesus meets three basic needs of this Samaritan woman. The need to love and be loved, the engagement, the need to belong, reciprocity, and the need to be understood, being validated for their experience of suffering and pain. So Jesus creates a climate where growth and inner healing can actually take place. And so Jesus knows who he is before approaching the woman. There's a sense of self-acceptance about Jesus. He accepts himself, He knows himself, and that's crucially important. Secondly, he risks approaching her with a physical need. Jesus discloses his need to a Samaritan woman. Thirdly, he uses the issue at hand of water to discuss deeper spiritual issues, that of faith sharing. And finally, he enters into deep dialogue with her when she talks about her own life. So what is that model I'm advocating and I practice also in my sphere of work, which is the dialogue model? So the dialogue model is defined as an engagement between two persons where there is reciprocity and it is mutually beneficial. What do I mean by that? Let's look at each part in turn. This is a simple way of saying what it involves in deepening our relationship with ourselves and to the person we are seeking to help. Firstly, it comes to this level of self-acceptance. Jesus knows who he is before he even approached the woman. So there is self-knowledge, a prerequisite for self-acceptance, enables Jesus and ourselves to grasp our personal giftedness and our limitation. There is this self-acceptance. It lowers down our need to be defensive and be open to the other person without fear of rejection. And it takes courage and humility to share insights about ourselves. And that's level 2, self-disclosure or self-revelation. So once we accept ourselves, we know ourselves, we accept ourselves, then we can begin to feel comfortable in sharing about ourselves, our self-disclosure regarding aspect of the self that one has discovered. Jesus was thirsty and he asked for a drink. Freedom to express feelings even when they are difficult or different from others, share our own struggles and story, the story of how I came to be where I am. Letting others know me without fear. I'm also allowing myself to experience the care of others and listening from others and receiving feedback. And we deepen to a third level called that of faith sharing. Sharing the gospel and the love of Christ becomes more comfortable as a choice is being made to use one's energy in constructive ways instead of meeting the expectation of others. We can shake off the shoots and the odds of life, of what other people expect of us, that have been internalized over the months and the years. And we are freer to share how God has been at work in one's life, in the here and now, new insights, meanings into one's spiritual life are discovered. And finally, feelings are more likely to be explored honestly, even while differences exist over opinions and issues. Individuals can hear and listen to each other without the fear of losing. And this process of a deepening relationship with the client in front of us help both to mutually experience genuine and real communication. So dialogue is the capstone of a life together, requiring courage to risk letting others into one's private space, into what one really is. And finally, this is a chart to just show you in those big print at the back of you what that really involves. So just very quickly on the first line, self-acceptance. What is the purpose of self-acceptance? To come to a deeper understanding of who I am. What is the task? To spend time in personal reflection. What are the fears? The fear of knowing who I really am, isn't it? The fear is there. And what's the virtue to achieve that? That of humility. And this is how we read the whole chart as we deepen our relationship with ourselves and with the person we are seeking to help and accompany. And finally, I leave you with this question: what it means to you and I personally to engage in this dialogue model as I have just presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rev Gilbert, for your very in-depth sharing. My name is Tak Meng. I am a pastor. That's all I am. And I'm a member of the body of Christ. And it's in that capacity that I stand before you. And I would like to just share what I have for you this morning. My two preceding speakers, whom I work very closely with, Steven has shared with us a very important and the key take-home of our panel. Recovery is possible. Can we say that together? Recovery is possible. Regardless what kind of mental illness, regardless how long you've been suffering, recovery is possible. And I hope that is something we can take home with us. And Rev Gilbert shared with us that in order for recovery to happen, relationship is crucial. Can we say that together? Relationship is crucial, right? Because without relationship, we are all alone. Relationship not only with God directly, but with one another. And in that environment of relationship, recovery becomes not only possible, but becomes real, okay? So my part that I want to share with you, if you see I'm a preacher, right? Recovery, relationship. So the third R is a role of the church. The role, that's who we are. We can talk about relationship with who? With a therapist, sure, you see her once a month or whatever, 2 weeks. But who do you see all the time? Church members. Who looks after you before, during, and after is the church. So I would like to share with you using a very familiar story to serve as a paradigm. And that's a story in Luke chapter 10, the story of the Good Samaritan. Thank God we have a wonderful presentation this morning by the Samaritans of Singapore. I'm making a plug for them right now. But I think there's much more to be understood from the parable of the Good Samaritan. That is more than just merely to pass judgment on the priest and the Levite who passed by. There's much more to be said, and I'd like to just share with you some thoughts. The first thing I want to share with you from the story of the Good Samaritan is that anyone, including you and me, including therapists, including pastors, can have a mental health crisis. In the story of the Good Samaritan, it just simply says, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among robbers. This is a metaphor for the journey of life. We are all going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. And instead of meeting robbers, we can easily encounter mental distress. We heard the heartbreaking story of a young man with adjustment disorder. You can change the name of the disorder. You can change the name of the man walking down from Jerusalem to Jericho. But you cannot change the fact that it is part of the human condition, that any one of us is susceptible, including myself. I've had my own journey with mental health struggles, and I have been blessed with the community that surrounded me. I've been blessed with professionals who attended to me. I've been blessed with family that believe in me, that recovery is possible. Otherwise, I would not be standing here with you this morning. So we have to recognize and see mental health struggles not as something that we need to pass judgment on, that a person is demonized or that he's being punished for sins, because these are the very kind of attitudes that prevent people from seeking help and cause them to be isolated in the darkness of their struggles. Because for a start, they already feel that way. And unless we emphasize a reverse truth, that no, you're not, no, you're not, no, you're not, but yes, we are here, yes, it's okay, yes, it's all right. If we don't emphasize it, all these negative things that drive them to the darkness is already there. So that's my purpose of showing this slide, that we should begin by recognizing that you and I are just as susceptible to mental health crisis as anyone else. And it is not a sign of weak faith or lack of discipline. And without help, a person may not, in fact, I would say without help, a person likely will not be able to simply snap out of it. How often have we prayed prayers? How often have we projected that they can just simply snap out of it? So if we begin by recognizing that, then instead of standing apart from a person with mental illness, we stand with. Big difference. Standing apart, you cannot help because there's no relationality. There is no accompaniment. But when we stand with, then it is as much our problem as their problem. So this is the first thing I'd like to share with us. Anyone can have a mental health crisis. Secondly, let's be honest, it is so easy to pass by on the other side, just like the priest and the Levite. I don't have to dwell too much about it. But let's recognize that this is not simply because we don't care. I think it's real that journeying with a person with mental illness takes time. And time in Singapore is so short off. I wish I have a 36-hour day, but I don't. We only have so much time. And often we may not necessarily have the resources. But the funny thing about resources is this. The more you think you don't have the resources, the more you won't have the resources. I was so encouraged by Brother Gasper, who said that the Samaritan of Singapore organized training for anyone, not only specialists, not only psychotherapists, to recognize signs of suicide. You say, I don't have resources? Go for a training. Suddenly you have resources. How many cell leaders do you have? How many assistant cell leaders do you have? They will come and train you. And suddenly this perception, I don't have resources, is no longer true. Even as pastors, we don't have to be a psychotherapist, but to be able to recognize and be able to have a basic mindset change already increases our personal resources and hence the resources of the church. Not sure what to do, part of the same thing. The more we avoid it, the more we won't know. But merely by coming to this conference, thank you, Pastor Seng Lee, for making this possible. We begin to have some idea that there's something that we can do. Of course, we live in the midst of many myths. Is a person dangerous because he has mental illness? Is mental illness contagious? Is it a demon that can jump upon me? The more we dispel these myths, the more we can be the church, be the recovery community that God has called us to be, right? So that's very important that we recognize that while it is so easy to pass by on the other side, these concerns can easily be addressed. And we find that we, not alone, but as a community, as a church, we can be involved. So I want to share with us 2 ways that we can be involved. We can all at least offer mental health first aid. The Samaritan had compassion. That's where it begins. It doesn't begin with a PhD. It doesn't begin with a master in counseling. It begins with having compassion because you are my brother. I don't want to show this compassion only when I attend your funeral because it'll be too late. If I have that compassion, I want to put that compassion to work now because it's easier to do something now. It may not even be possible to do anything later. So what this Samaritan did, went to him, bound out his wounds, pouring oil and wine, sent him on his animal and all that. This is basically first aid. It is about attending and listening with compassion, with empathy, and with non-judgment. I think Pastor Gilbert has emphasized that point. Not to allow our bias to become a barrier. So this can bring immediate relief. But that relief alone may not be sufficient. We also need prayer because the spiritual accompaniment is not only the human dimension, but that vertical, sacred dimension. Through prayer, we bring God a reassurance into the person's life that he's not rejected by God. Can you imagine if we have that notion that he is actually under God's judgment? How heavy that burden will be. But if we recognize that God is with him, and that prayer is not for a magical removal of the illness, it's not that he snapped out of it, but that God is not only there, but God is with him in the journey until he comes out of that pit that he is in. And of course, we can do more than that in mental health first aid. As you learn more about it, you talk about devising a safety plan. Would you agree with me, please, before you do anything, if you feel the urge to come to hurt yourself, call me. This is my number. Put my number on your speed dial, okay? Tell me what are you going to do. Let's rehearse it together. So putting this in place provides resources for the person. And of course, often professional help is needed because there's an underlying issue. And I hope that through the booths that you would visit today and the different resources, every church will have this list. Pastors, can you make this list available to your cell leaders so that we can press those buttons and bring the person to seek professional help before it is too late. And there are other statistics to show that very often people seek help for their mental illness very late. as late as 8 to 10 years after they first experience it. Maybe the Dr. Leong can test out this statistic. Is it correct? No? And to me, I look at that as not just 8 to 10 years of time wasted, but it's 8 to 10 years of allowing the disease to go deeper and therefore more difficult to get out. But more importantly, it's 8 to 10 years of the person's potential. In the 8 to 10 years, the person can become someone like our last speaker, can be already helping somebody already, but yet is still there struggling alone because of the lack of support from us. So let's shorten that. Let it not be 8 to 10 years. Let it be 1 or 2 years. I think even 1 to 2 years is too long. How about 3 months at most? Okay. So that's mental health first aid. And SOS is doing a great job at that. And I'm sure we can do more at our own level in church. But let me just say further that very often we only deal with the crisis phase. Mental health first aid is when there's a lot of hoo-ha, there's a lot of crisis and all that. And there's energy that spurs us into action. But the journey to recovery, remember, recovery is possible, may not be instantaneous. So after this mental health first aid, we can journey towards recovery together. And often this is where people falter, because they get the attention when they are about to commit suicide. But after that, the attention is withdrawn, because crisis is over, ma. We all get on with our life, get on with our programs, get on with our plans and all that. But these very plans that we are excited to do to bring people into the kingdom sometimes takes our attention from the people that are already in the kingdom, but they are being left out as we move forward. They are being left behind. So there are a few things we can do to journey with people in recovery, and this is modeled in the way the Good Samaritan acted. He not only gave the first aid, but he brought the man to an inn, and he gave the innkeeper resources to look after the man. But look at this, it says, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back. This Good Samaritan was committed to a long-term recovery, to a complete recovery, to a process that takes time. So the challenge given to you and me by the Lord is, are we willing to journey with them until they reach the point of recovery? It may take a year, it may take 3 years. But if we journey with them, then they will not drag on until 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So there are a few things we can do. Medication-wise, for those that need to be under medication, we can encourage and support their compliance. It is a much more challenging thing than we imagine, because some of these medication, especially the older generation drugs, may have side effects. And there may be a stigma to the very fact that you're taking medication. And we can help in overcoming that stigma. Second, we can journey with them in the rehabilitation process, referring them, for example, to one of the rehab services that Singapore Anglican Community Services has, and journeying with them, keeping track with them. How's your counseling going? What are you learning in the process? How is your therapy giving you new insights about yourself? How are you growing? And how are you more capable than 6 months ago? So when we track with them, right, we help them to confront their root issues, and we provide positive coping. We encourage them to instill this positive coping into their life, to weed out the negative coping that they have learned in the past. We help them in self-care and so on and so forth. So SACS provides this service, but we always welcome church members to journey along with us, because that journey eventually is to bring them back into the church. So it is not like going to a laundromat, you give us the dirty laundry, we give you back the clean laundry. It doesn't work that way. It's like, let's do this together. So we have a role. That's where the community comes in, to provide acceptance, to consolidate their Christ-like identity, give them a sense of belonging, support them, and help them to discover the real purpose for their life. And of course, spirituality. Pastor Gilbert talked about the spiritual accompaniment. Help them to grow in their inner man. The Lord allowed them to encounter this crisis, but the Lord is also able to use this crisis instead of using it for evil to destroy them. God can use this crisis to bless them, to strengthen them, so that they come out from this crisis deeper in God, deeper in the church, deeper in their self-identity as a child of God, relationship with man, relationship with God. So I hope that by listening to me for the past few minutes about these points, I hope that you can recognize that not only is recovery possible, right, and recovery requires relationship, but you and I as a church, we have a role. Thank you very much.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ. My name is Kok Liang, and I thank you for taking the time to listen to my recovery story. Okay. I used to be a property agent. I wasn't the kind of super rich real estate agent. I just earned enough to get by. Everything was going well, and I was happy with the money, but at the same time, very stressful as the workload became heavier. So one day, my life changed. I started hearing voices and experienced hallucinations. While I was driving, I would see people doing signs at me and following me. At home, I would hear a woman being tortured and screaming in agony. All this made me very frightened. When the woman screaming in agony became louder, I could not take it anymore. I would run up and down my block of flats, knocking on the neighbors' doors and asking them to stop torturing the poor woman. I even called the police several times to report about the woman who was being tortured. However, when the police arrived, they couldn't hear anyone screaming. My calls to the police continued, and they started noticing that I was emotionally unstable. They suspected that I might have some mental health problem. My mother then took me to a counselor, who then recommended a psychiatrist. I was diagnosed with schizophrenia and had to be on medications. The psychiatrist also recommended me to go to CMHC Care Center, now known as Anglican Care Center CMHC, for rehab. When I first arrived at ACC CMHC, I was very depressed and never imagined that I would suffer from mental illness. My life felt meaningless. I felt worthless. Every day I would turn up to CMHC very down and sad. I kept to myself and refused to make friends. I would sleep all day, only waking up to eat. I would meet up with my counselor during the counseling sessions, but I did not share much with her. I did not have the energy and interest to engage in the rehab programs and group activities. Things started changing a year later. My recovery story began when Jesus woke me up from my slumber. My recovery story has everything to do with Jesus. These are the 5 steps to recovery. J stands for joining activities. E, enjoying learning. S, surrounding myself with positive people. U, upgrade my skills. And S, serving others. My road to recovery began when I started joining the activities. I noticed people around me moving on with their life. People were going out to work and study. And I started thinking that maybe I could do that too. That motivated me to be more active, and I started off by socializing and making friends at CMHC. Soon I went out for lunch and watched movies with them too. I slowly began to open up to my counselor and share more with her. I picked up more interest and actively participated in almost all the programs at CMHC. I even volunteered to join the outreach activity to Orange Valley Nursing Home. Gradually, I noticed that I became more cheerful and felt more alive. The second step to recovery is to enjoy learning. I became more open-minded to learning new things. I joined Yes Club for the young people, and I learned how to play the ukulele and cook simple dishes. Things that I had never done before, but actually enjoyed learning them. Jerry, the healthcare assistant, also known as HCA, taught me how to do simple admin duties like taking attendance and writing reports. I benefited so much from the rehab programs that I started encouraging others, members, to take part too. I became a peer support without myself knowing it. God was preparing me for the job that would help me be a blessing to others. There are 2 slides. Yeah, this is a slide on learning ukulele and doing the gym. Okay. Recovery step 3 is surrounding myself with positive people, especially godly Christians. In the year 2012, a member called Jack shared with me about Jesus and prayed for me. He then invited me to his church, St. Andrew Community Church, that was just next door to Anglican Care Center, Simei. It's the St. Andrew's Community Hospital. At first, I felt uncomfortable, but the brothers and sisters in Christ welcomed me and made me feel like one of them. I was touched that they did not shun me because of my mental health issues. I experienced the love of God when I was in church. When Jack was discharged from the center, God sent another member called Iris to accompany me to church. From that time onwards, I knew that my life was going to change for the better. My counselor, family, friends, and the staff continued to encourage me, and to my surprise, I became in charge of setting up the audio and projector for Pastor Gilbert and Pastoral Care Pamela. I enjoy attending all the English and Chinese devotions. One day, Pamela asked me if I would like to be baptized. I immediately said yes. My family members could see the positive transformation in me and attended my baptism, even though they were Buddhists. These are my friends at Anglican Care Center, my boss, and Steven Ting here. These are my peer support specialists in SACS. And some of the HCAs in the center. Okay, recovery step number 4 is to upgrade my skills. In 2013, my counselor and staff encouraged me to attend a peer support specialist course. With the support and tutoring from the staff, especially my current boss, who is the program manager at ACC CME, I became the first person in the organization to pass and graduate from the peer specialist course. After the graduation, thank you. After the graduation, I was blessed with the opportunity to provide peer support work at Anglican Care Center, Simei. In May 2016, I decided to advance in the area further with the peers employment resilience learning and graduated from the course too. All glory to God. Okay. In the year 2017, I graduated from the peer support specialist course by NCSS. In February 2018, I was employed as a full-time program assistant cum peer support specialist at Anglican Care Center, Simei. I'm still working there today, surrounded by the encouraging colleagues and bosses here. Okay, I got 5 slides of pictures showing me working with I'm doing peer support work with individual with the member, and doing workshop work with the members in our center, and doing programs with them also. Yeah. Okay, the last step of recovery is to serve others. Okay, I go on. Okay, in 1 Peter chapter 4:10, God wants us whatever gift that God has given us to serve others. We do not live for ourselves. We live to serve others so that God's name will be glorified. I continue to serve God faithfully to this day, to give hope to our rehab members that my recovery story can be theirs too. I'm not special. I'm just a child of God who practiced the 5 steps of recovery and found victory in Christ Jesus. I'm also proud to be a mental health ambassador, encouraging Singaporeans to seek medical help early. They don't have to suffer in silence. Here's a newspaper article of me doing a good job. So I say, but the life. Okay. But the light of God cannot be hidden. Okay. Before I end, kindly allow me to share a word of encouragement from the Bible to you. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, brothers and sisters, let us not grow weary of doing good, for due season we will reap if we do not give up. Amen. Thank you, brothers and sisters in Christ, for taking the time to come and listen to my presentation. Thank you, and God bless you.
Well done. Indeed, we are called all to let our light shine before others, right? So that they may actually see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. So in the same way, let our good deeds, even as we coming to this conference, shine out to let all to see, so that everyone will praise our Heavenly Father. Yes, isn't this what we are here for? Right? So I think we have 7 more minutes to 12:15. The Slido, can we have the the questions? Yes, and you all can vote. So I think it's so important. All right, so if you all vote your questions up, then we'll answer those questions. So please vote. Okay, the first one, can you all help us highlight? Would I go to the first one? Top one, Okay, how do we discern if a member is in need for psychiatric care or in need of deliverance? Okay. That's why we got 2 pastors here. That's why, don't know, refer to the psychiatrist. We do the assessment.
I will, of course, defer to Dr. Leong for anything he'd like to add. Okay, first of all, I think maybe we need to reframe the question. Very often we think of it as either or.
Yep.
Psychiatric care or deliverance. It's as good as saying, split my body from my spirit. Can I do that? I can't. Whatever happens to my body affects my spirit. Whatever happens to my spirit affects my body. So I think, first of all, I'd like to suggest that we reframe the question. Secondly, for something a bit more practical, usually if you talk about deliverance, usually people talk about 2 aspects. One is some kind of demonic influence, perhaps from their maybe previous beliefs and so on and so forth. But usually, if it is just basically being a practitioner of another religion, you don't see a lot of so-called demonic type of thing, unless the person goes very deep and actually gives themselves to certain demonic control. So the key word here is history, and not jump to conclusions. So to take a full account of a person's religious experience from the earliest time that they can remember, and not consider a person as demonized by association. I don't think it happens that way. I think a person has to be very intentionally involved at a very deep level where they surrender the control of their life to some other entity, Okay, so I think if you don't see that happen, I will not be too worried about that, and I will focus more on the Word of God and the psychiatric care and the counseling that will help a person to regain strength. But I'd like to just mention one last thing is that when we talk about deliverance, sometimes we get it confused with inner healing. Because we all go through life, we all go through trauma, and sadly, the 10% in the statistics that sometimes our family of origin is a source of that trauma. Now that can wound us very deeply, right? So is that a call for deliverance? I think depends on your definition. But at that deep level, very often it is not just medication, it is not just awareness, but there is a woundedness in our spirit. And rather than just focusing on an unclean spirit, very often it is a wounded human spirit that needs God's love to minister and bring healing at a deeper level. So I wouldn't consider deliverance, but there are other pastors that may practice differently. We may be talking about the same thing using different terms. But to be wounded in the spirit is not the same as being controlled by a different spirit. So that is where I bear the distinction. I hope that helps.
Thank you. And thank you. I remember I thought Matthew 4:4, man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Also Luke 4:4 also the same, say, you know. So say. But actually, if you look at it, man does not live on food alone. That means you still have to eat one. Correct? Jesus fed the 5,000 and then gave them the word. So I think here in psychiatric rehabilitation, really caring, just like the example, the Samaritan, you really have to give the medicine, bring the healing, bring to the inn, and then you can give the word. And for example, the Kok Liang actually shared how he struggled in his early recovery. Don't want to do anything, don't want to be engaged, but because of the good works of the community, the friends, the people inviting him, giving a warm and welcoming environment for him, and then leading him from the darkness into the light, and then people inviting him to church. So I think that's very, very important. Right? So in my work, I see a lot of people. There was one case who came to the clinic and then went into like possessed like that, you know. So I look at her, I said, you sit down, you don't sit down, I'll lock you up. Then he came down and sit down. So I don't think she's possessed. Okay? So, I mean, if you can talk to them in dialogue, so I see all sorts of situations. But also I saw one particular instance, first time I seen this man who's in his 60s. He shared during the Anglican conference. And basically, he was a business owner, he became bankrupt, right? And his wife divorced him. And his father in his 80s was dying in the hospital. And because of his drinking, he had a charge, drink driving charge, and going to court. And he came to see me. Of course, he's depressed, you know, persistently low mood, nothing makes him happy. He has a lot of suicidal thoughts. First time I see him in the clinic, then I look at him. I don't know whether I want to admit him to Woodbridge or not, into a ward. I said, Lord, what could I do? I asked the Spirit, what do I say? And the Spirit spoke to me, tell him. And I said, tell him what? Holy Spirit. Yeah, I asked the Holy Spirit. And he said, what came out of my mouth is, Mr. So-and-so, you only have one hope, you want to believe or not? Then he looked at me, yes, I want to believe. I said, Jesus Christ, you want to believe or not? He said, yes, I want to believe. And I called Pastor King, who was actually the chaplain from Maokang Care Center, the Anglican Care Center. And Pastor King met him for a meal, prayed for him, right? So offer food, and also the reassurance praying for him. Got a church, right? There's a church, in his church there was the lawyer who actually did the pro bono case for him. He also visited the father in hospital, and that man received Jesus Christ after this journey through the church. So it's so wonderful, right? It's so wonderful. So sometimes as a professional, I also ask, this is at my wit's end really. Maybe this man just need to admit, because that's my professional, right? You come to Woodbridge, I'll admit you because they suicidal thoughts. But I think also on the other part, I also obey my Father in heaven. I think that's very important. Who do we trust and who do we obey? Right, so I hope that answers some of the questions that was already there. Okay, but the next one, in the context of employing a person with mental health issues, how does one balance the organizational needs with showing compassion to someone who may not be as efficient or may have meltdown any time? Yes, Stephen, you want to answer that?
Hello. Yeah. Good morning again. So how do you encourage youth at risk of self-harm or suicide to seek professional help?
No,
The one? Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
The top one, the blue.
Cannot see. In the context of
While he's
employing a
reading that,
person.
maybe I let him have some time to process it. Maybe I just say something. If you're on treatment and on medication, very stable. Okay, very stable. I mean, just like the admission criteria, really, right, to the service, you need to be on treatment 3 months, no suicide attempt, not using any active use of substances. So actually, people are actually quite stable, and they are able to go for rehabilitation and of course go to work. But I think the question may be, if somebody actually falls sick again, because mental health issues, brain disorder is actually like any sickness like asthma, right, like a stroke, right? How would the organization actually help this person or help this employee? That's how I reframe the question.
Yeah. Thank you.
For
Thank
Steven.
you. Yeah. We have a very positive experience working with Kok Liang. So he set a very good the benchmark for many of us. So we're very thankful of that. But I think it's a very practical thing, as in when you encounter some difficulties, whereby some of the mental health agencies that employ people recover from the mental health conditions do encounter this. I will not deny that it's not a simple thing. It's really require a lot of the support, and not only at the management level that to have this understanding and the support, is actually the awareness from the entire group that come together to journey and support them. It requires a lot of the efforts and intentionality of doing this. Now, when we actually go and seeking for the employment opportunity from the different company, and usually the bosses, the managers level say that, yes, please send your people to come and work here. But usually the problem that we face is actually people on the ground. They are not so willing because when they are not well, they're not able to get the job done. Then who have to do that? It's actually their colleagues, the supervisor that work together with them. So what we do is we come together to really give them the visions. We share with them how you can actually support them. As I said, it's not an easy thing. It requires the entire team to come together to support them. The good things is we do come across to see the success in the time that we invest on them. Eventually, we see the result in this. But my conclusion here is it requires a lot of efforts, intentionality to do this together, and it's not an easy thing.
May I just add a little bit to that from an employer's perspective? So this happened when Steven was the head of Anglican Care Center, CMA, and I was the senior pastor of the church next door. And he recommended one of his clients to take up an admin position in my church. So it was a partnership. I think that's the first thing that is important. We cannot just throw a person to a job. So Steven helped me to understand the limitation of this individual, and we tailored a job that she can do well, but at a certain pace. So my job as employer and supervisor was to assign a buddy to this staff and to tailor the kind of jobs that the person can do and to pace it at a level that the person can manage. But I also had to help my leaders as well as the rest of the staff team to understand that this person may have certain limitation in terms of how much he or she can engage with us. And we need to be understanding when sometimes he or she does not want to join certain things, as long as she gets her job done. and to provide that nurturing and supportive environment. So I think this is what that partnership between the employer and the rehab agency, how it can work out. Again, recovery is possible.
Thank you, thank you. Maybe I give an example, illustration. Like if somebody has asthma and is triggered by a very dusty environment, you don't send the person to a dusty environment, right? To trigger the asthma, right? So I think this is what I call job accommodation. Right, but on the other hand, the person with asthma or even poorly controlled needs to take the medication treatment, the medical treatment to be stable. Okay? Likewise for brain conditions like epilepsy, right, where you actually need to take medicine, otherwise you can throw a fit. Likewise for other conditions like the stroke, for example, if you don't take your treatment, or if, for heart condition you don't take your treatment, you can get another heart failure or heart attack. Likewise. So I think one thing very important, I think Rev Tak Meng actually asked just now, which I will answer, is about thing called treatment gap. Treatment gap. What's treatment gap is basically persons with mental health conditions are not being seen to and treated early enough, right? And he mentioned 5 years, 10 years not treated, 5 years, 10 years wasted life, right, before coming to treatment. And then it's very, very difficult because the person have lost the number of years, have formed some unhealthy habits or bad habits. Then it's very difficult to break that cycle. So we're all actually appealing to the participants here. If you see somebody who's struggling with mental health issues, do come earlier for treatment. We want to reduce the treatment gap and also to prevent poor outcomes. I think that's very important. Thank you. Pastor Singley, do you want to end now or at the next question?
One last question.
One last question. Okay. What's the last one? The next one. Okay, Kok Liang, thank you for sharing that brings hope and light. May I ask if you still experience schizophrenia and to what extent? And also, when was the turning point for you in the road of recovery? How did your family members help?
Oh, I'm very blessed. Ever since I came to Anglican Care Center, Simei, I have not relapsed. Yeah, that's why I'm very happy to be there. Yeah, ever since I've been through the programs, yeah, and doing the peer support courses and going to church, yeah, I've not relapsed. How do your family members? And my family members also were very supportive. Yeah, and all my bosses and colleagues here, very supportive, very positive. Yeah. At the beginning, of course, when I first started work, there was some, my job scope wasn't clear, but later on they helped me clarify and slowly, like they said, slowly adjust, help me through my job. Yeah. So far I've been working 5 years straight, no relapse as well. And basically I've been, by doctor, I still take medication, vitamins for the brain, but I've stopped taking my psychotic medication for about 1 year plus, but still take if the doctor asks you to take. But I still see my doctor once every 6 months. Usually it was once every 3 months, then later 4 months, now once every 6 months. Yeah. My doctor Winslow, Professor. Okay, thank you. I see him many years already, 10 more years already. Okay, thank you.
And Kok Liang is not the only peer support specialist have very good recovery. There's also Alan Ng, right? His story came out 2017 on Straits Times for the World Mental Health Day. You can actually, the title of the Straits Times article, Guiding Others to Peace of Mind. Guiding others to peace of mind. I think that's what the church should be. We should be a light in the community. And I like what Kok Liang actually shared about Jesus. He says it's an acronym for, number 1, join activities. Number 2, E for enjoy learning. S for surrounding himself with positive people. S for upgrading skills. And then finally, the U for upgrading skill and S for serving others. Right? So really, I think we need to point people to Jesus and also understand that it's a process in recovery. So thank you everyone for listening to this wonderful team. Let's give them a round of applause again on this journey to recovery. we will have more and more people recover from severe mental illness and mental health issues. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, yes. You know, one of the things that I was looking at the group here, beside the, we are thankful for the recovery of Kok Liang, but I don't know whether you notice another very important dynamic, and that's the caring community. It's caring community at work. And not just any caring community, but caring community that is informed. And so there's a need for us to be informed, equipped, and be the community. And I believe there will be many more Kok Liangs that can be rescued. Amen? We can see more of such healing